So what we're seeing now is the reality that we only actually have one party in this country when it comes to national security policy and war policy. It is the war party. And it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, the policy is consistent. We are living in a moment where we have a man in the White House who won the Nobel Peace Prize, who is a constitutional lawyer by training, and who is presiding over a global assassination program, and is presiding over a massive surveillance state. And a lot of liberals would have expected this from Dick Cheney, who's a cartoonish villain that I actually do think lives in a cave and spends his nights and days thinking of how to fuck up the world. But at the end of the day, I do think that Cheney is on a fishing boat somewhere, having a good chuckle and thanking God that Barack Obama was elected president and not John McCain, because it made it possible for that one-party state to continue its reign. I also think that the premier issue that any of us could work on in terms of just looking at the political process in this country, regardless of what your issue is to get huge corporations out of our political campaign process. Because, and I may be saying something here that's a little bit toxic, I don't know, but I believe it. The Democrats are now the largest recipients of money from the war industry, because that industry sees which way the wind is blowing. When they think a Republican's going to win, they'll favor them. When they think a Democrat's going to win, favor them. Big pharma, big energy, all of these corporate interests are purchasing members of Congress in a legalized form of bribery that in some countries looks like suitcases of cash going to someone. But here we just call it campaign finance. And until the corporations have less of a voice, I mean huge corporations, I'm not talking about small businesses, I'm talking about big behemoth corporations, until we stop this system where they can just purchase Democrats and Republicans and that their interests are more important than the interests of ordinary people in this country, nothing will ever fundamentally change. The people who run the permanent national security state know that they can wait out any president, and that they can try to lobby internally and with their corporate friends to make sure that the next guy or the next woman, as it may be if Hillary Clinton wins, is going to be more favorable to their interests. And to me, that is the huge behemoth that we're facing. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a journalist, and I don't consider myself a member of either of those parties, and they don't speak for me. I started working as a journalist in the 1990s when Clinton was president. And I think that's part of why I wasn't so taken with some of the rhetoric of Obama and his advisors on the campaign trail, because Clinton was an incredibly belligerent, pugnacious commander-in-chief. He initiated the longest sustained bombing campaign since Vietnam under the guise of the North and South no-fly zones in Iraq. He was the one who really started to bring back the idea of assassination as a central component of U.S. policy with the cruise missile attacks in Afghanistan and then the bombing of the Al-Shifa pharmaceutical plant in Sudan.
Extraordinary rendition.
Well, and then people always talk about rendition under Bush, but it started under President Clinton. I think that a lot of the criticism of Obama from liberals who are disaffected is somewhat disingenuous, because Obama largely telegraphed his passes. If you went beyond the tin can campaign speech and actually looked at who he was surrounding himself with, read his policy positions, and then looked at speeches he gave in places like APAC and elsewhere, you got a clear sense that he was going to be a manager of empire and that he saw himself that way. And he tapped into, and I think this is very cynical, he tapped into the fact that so many people did want a clean break from the Bush-Cheney era, and they were willing to sort of project onto Obama what they wanted to see in a candidate rather than exploring who he actually was. Hunt and kill and preemptive war became the doctrine of Obama's national security policy, and essentially they outsourced it to the most unsavory forces within the U.S. national security apparatus. And it's totally out of control to this day. They have the run of the game. The military and the CIA are in full control of a huge portion of America's foreign policy, and it's an expansionist foreign policy, and it's a foreign policy that's going to create blowback, because we're killing a tremendous number of innocent people. We are making more new enemies every day than we are killing actual terrorists or people who pose a threat to our country. We saw this case with the Associated Press, where they basically, seized the phone records of the journalists who were doing the most aggressive reporting on the CIA, and they went after their source.
Criminality, arms dealing, fraud, tax evasion, child prostitution, murder, all of which Z denies, even in cases where its employees have already pleaded guilty.
They continuously changed their name. It was formerly Blackwater.